Welcome to All in Adams, the official podcast of Adams County government, where we're all in for our residents, our employees, and our community. So whether you live here, work here, or you just want to know more about what makes Adams County a great place to be, thanks for tuning in. We're all in, Adams.
Welcome back to a new episode of the All in Adams podcast. My name is Surya Vijayasarathi. I am a continuous improvement specialist and a mental health first aid instructor at the Adams County Health Department. And I'm very excited to be guest hosting the podcast today. Our conversation today is about one of the most important and widespread public health issues facing not just our county, but our entire nation as a whole, and that is mental health and suicide. We all have mental health, and discussions about mental health, just like this, help to reduce stigma. But please be advised that our conversation will cover the topics of suicide, adult mental health, and youth mental health. We encourage our listeners to take care of yourselves and to listen at your own pace. If you or someone you know needs immediate mental health support, call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Help and hope are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And with that, on to the podcast. So we're releasing this episode during Suicide Prevention Month, and we have some amazing guests to speak to suicide prevention, to raising awareness, and sharing both resources and initiatives related to that really, really important topic. So I'm first joined by Lee Von Hupfer, the Deputy Director of the Adams County Health Department, and Chris Churches, the CEO of Community Uplift Partnership, or CUP. Welcome, both of you. Nice to have you here. So I just want to start just by getting to know both of you here. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourselves and why this topic of suicide prevention is so important to you. And Lee Von, let's start with you.
Great. Thanks for having me. Lee Von Hupfer, Deputy Executive Director of the Adams County Health Department. I also am in clinical practice as a counselor, therapist for 20 years. And so both in my role at the health department and clinically in my role, it's the most important thing. We want people to be living, thriving, connected members of our community. And I have family members that have struggled with suicidal thoughts and ideations and attempts. And so it's a very important topic to me because it's also a topic that is misunderstood. And as you mentioned, it's sometimes just not talked about in an open manner. And so really happy that we're doing this and talking about it today.
Yeah, I appreciate you raising all those things on. I think we'll talk about stigma. We'll talk about why people don't talk about this issue. So I'm really glad that we are today in this space. Thank you. All right, Chris, how about you?
I'm Chris Churches, the Executive Director for CUP, Community Uplift Partnership. I'm also really grateful to be here. I also think it's a super important topic, and I hate that we can't talk about it. And you have to keep it all secret and private, and it's all like you have this dark past or this dark story, and you can't ever talk about it, and you're just hopeful you get help. So CUP is a nonprofit in our community in Adams County, and we do life skills classes and job skills classes for young adults ages 16 to 24. Our students take a class called Youth Empowerment Program, YEP. And one of the whole weeks of the class is just committed to mental health awareness and suicide prevention. And we're trying to really, as a nonprofit and as caring adults in the community, we really are trying to change that stigma and trying to change that you can talk about it. And we have signs up in our bathrooms and if you need help, and we talk about it in our class, and then we tell our stories and we try to normalize having crucial conversations around this topic. It's really important. For me personally, I have just my own stories, as so many people do, but suicide is on the rise, sadly, as you all know. And so it's really important that we talk about it and we have real solutions and people get help. So That's from a personal perspective.
Yeah, I think both of those things are important, right? Talking about it professionally and personally.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the statistics, most likely suicide has impacted most of us
For sure.
in this space, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have my own personal experiences of it. I used to be a social worker as well. That was my career before I came into the health department. So this is an important topic for, I know, all three of us, and I'm sure for many people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I want to start, because we're going to be releasing this episode during Suicide Prevention Month, September. So let's just talk about that first. why is it important? Why is this such an important issue to dedicate an entire month to? And why is it important specifically for our Adams County community?
Well, we don't want people to live in the darkness or in the shadows. We want people to find the connection that they're needing. Suicide, people don't just wake up and think, gosh, how do I end my life? And death by suicide is a big problem in our county. In 2024, last year, was the 10th leading cause of death. We lost 105 people in Adams County to suicide. And that's 105 people too many. And so we want to be able to have conversations so that people know that they're not alone and that it's okay to talk about it. But ultimately, it's the result of people feeling lonely, and it's the result of people having pain in their lives, real pain, physical pain, emotional pain. And so we want to make sure that people have the connections and the comfort that they need, because the opposite of loneliness is connection and the opposite of pain is comfort. And that's why it's such an important topic, and that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, Chris, if you have any thoughts to share on that specifically.
Yeah, say that again, though. The opposite of loneliness is connection. Say that.
The opposite of loneliness is connection. The opposite of pain is comfort.
Oh, yeah. So good.
Yeah.
Sadly, Cup has had just like firsthand experience with one of our students was getting all the help that we thought. And then when he left, he moved out of state, and he only lasted about a month, and he took his life. And it was really eye-opening for us because it was terrible and sad, of course, but also super eye-opening. Like, you can't be with every person all the time in their house all the time, but there are actual tools you can give people. And so we really tried to make a pretty deliberate shift in giving people tools and giving people resources,
right,
along with connection and along with comfort. And so that's partly why it's really near and dear to my heart, because that was super sad, obviously, for all of us to go through. Also in my own family, just have so many people in my family who have either committed suicide or have suicidal ideations, and what do they really need? But then I actually saw this breakthrough in Cup. I have this amazing story. You tell me when you want to hear the story. It's so good.
Let's go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we actually have, during this week, we have this mental health week, and we have this really amazing therapist who comes in and gives this guest speaker and talks about the 5 steps that you can take. And the number one step is, you're the expert, you probably know, but the number one step is ask, right? Ask out loud, are you going to kill yourself? And we had this huge circle conversation about this. Why does that make a difference? Why does that help? But it does. It's the most profound question, and it kind of shocks people out of whatever they're feeling. And you just flat out ask somebody, are you going to kill yourself? And it, depending on the answer, then you proceed. So the answer to this, we had a student who was having these thoughts, and then the person who asked her was in our class, took our class, learned the skill. Are you going to kill yourself? No, I guess I'm not. But then step 2, and then find connection, tell a trusted adult, go to them, be with them. They're followed all the other steps. What's the number? 988?
The crisis
The
number.
crisis, yeah. Call 988. Anyway, within a week, they were at the coffee house playing checkers and connecting, and just crisis averted. But the big, beautiful part of that was just learn that skill of asking that question, that really tough question. And then it made this huge impact, because she was like, no, I guess I'm not. I just feel so sad. And then they did all the following steps after that. But I'm like, whoa, it really works. And it's really powerful. So I guess I share that story right now because that's actually what I really love to get out of this podcast, is an actual tool that people can use. Because when our student left, I feel like we didn't fully equip him correctly, because it just was so heartbreaking that he didn't have tools like that. And there's many more, but that was just one of them. Yeah.
No, Chris, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's a really important story to highlight.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the misconceptions that people have about suicide, right? That if you ask the question, you're going to put the thought in their head. And that is a huge myth.
No, it's
right?
not true. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what about that question like helps to kind of prompt people to have a more honest conversation about suicide or about mental health?
Well, if somebody's to the point where they feel like that's the only way out for them, or they want to die by suicide, part of what it does is it decreases just the amount of adrenaline in the person and gets that topic sort of out into the open, so to speak, so that just the chemicals in their brain actually change. Making a connection with another human being and talking about something that's that serious out loud helps drive the connection. So it's exactly what Chris is saying. And so there's actually a neurological thing going on too, which is pretty fascinating. But I remember in grad school, there was a debate on should you talk about it or not, because there was still a myth that if you talked about it, you were going to drive someone to die by suicide. And that's not true. There's nothing true about that.
Right.
In fact, I think it's the opposite. I really do. Like the isolation that comes around not talking about it, and then the stigmatism around it. I think that is like, you're the expert, you know more than I do, but it just feels that way. Like when you just hide all the emotions and you never talk about it, you just feel so sad and lonely. And especially I am a mom of 4 kids, and some of my kids have dealt with that. And I'm always like, what do I do? What do I say? But honestly, the more I say it and the more I get involved, the better. They feel less alone. They feel more protected. One of my daughters had to be on a psych hold, and her dad visited her every single day. And all they did was just talk about her feelings and talk about her emotions. And then she was like, okay, I feel so much better. Thank you. And I mean, like, it's so hard for family members. We're all just so torn up about it. But then you just like take that big, bold step of just asking those tough questions and digging in. And then, I don't know, it's less scary and it's less overwhelming. What is less scary in technical terms, Levon?
I don't know, but all of us at our core, we all want to be seen and heard and just understood. And that's exactly what you're talking about, is like we all want to be understood where we are and we get into this problem sometimes where we think like we're not the expert and so we can't help, or we're not a professional. But the reality is being able to empathize and connect with somebody is oftentimes just as powerful. And I think that's really an important point that Chris is making.
I think oftentimes, I'm so glad you all raised these points about how that question can really open up and give permission to someone to have a conversation and say what they've been thinking or feeling, but haven't been able to actually fully articulate. And I'm also thinking about the people who ask the question, right? I feel like a lot of times people, they might know a friend or a colleague or a partner or a child, right, who is experiencing a mental health challenge or maybe thinking about suicide, and they just don't even know how to start the conversation. They don't even know what to say. What advice would you give to someone in that situation? What's the first step that they could take to start to even initiate a conversation like that if they're feeling uncomfortable, if they feel like that's a bold step?
My answer is that this education is super important to that person. When I got this same education, I was like, oh, that makes it a lot easier. Knowing that people have studied or collected data or metrics and they can say, no, this really works. Like, we promise you're not going to make it worse, because there's fear around that. So like saying that this is the correct way to handle the situation, and not that there's always like the perfect way to handle a situation, but educating people on this makes it a lot easier. I can tell you that. Now we just teach classes of young people how to do it this way. And we have evidence that this is a much better way to just boldly like get in someone's business and ask what's going on, but then follow it up with care and commitment. The story I told about that student asking his friend, are you going to kill yourself? And then she said no. Then it was followed up with, okay, I'm going to tell our teacher. I'm also going to put us in a group text. Also, let's get together on Friday. So there was care and compassion at the other end of the question, which if you have time and capacity for that, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, connection takes courage.
Mm.
And it is very much a courageous thing to ask that question to someone else. But it may be one of the most important questions you ever ask somebody. And so, yeah, it does take courage. And I think that's an important point.
Absolutely. Levon, you've talked a lot about connection today. I think it's been a word that you've been bringing up over and over again and talking about suicide prevention. And I'd like to just kind of dig into that a little bit more. We are in a world where we are very connected in many ways, right? With social media and things like that. But at the same time, we're also in a loneliness epidemic. And so I'm curious if you could speak more to connection and how to foster that within our own spaces and our own communities.
Yeah, it feels like cognitive dissonance to be in a world where we can be connected with anyone around the world at any time virtually, but we have an epidemic of loneliness. And so what we really know is that people crave authentic connection. And, people define that differently, but we know that people need to have close friendships and close connections with a few people. And connection is something, if you spend 10 minutes with me, I'll talk about connection all day long because I'm also an addiction counselor. And the opposite of addiction is not sobriety and abstinence, it's connection. And we know that suicide also often has co-occurring needs like substance use disorders and addiction, or mental health needs that haven't been treated or haven't been helped. And I think that, the most important thing is that we want people to have their needs met. We all strive to have our own needs met in life. And when we can't get our needs met in ways that are appropriate or healthy, then we are striving for something else. And that's really what we're talking about, is how do people get their needs met? And so connection is something that I think it's approachable in the sense that you don't have to be a professional. You don't have to, be an executive director somewhere. You can be in any walk of life, in any age, and still create connecting spaces, connecting schools, connecting workplaces, connecting neighborhoods, by being that kind of person that you want to see in the world, by connecting with those people around you. And so I think in that sense, it's a very approachable concept that if I feel connected in my neighborhood or where I work or where I live, then I am just a little bit more safer, so to speak, and protected from the things in this world that are tough to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
Chris, you were nodding a lot
Yeah,
during that
it's so
segment. It sounds like it
powerful.
resonated with you.
Yeah, it really does. For CUP, we always say through connection and education. Those are like our two pillars we stand on. But connection is key. You can't get anywhere by yourself. It's really hard. It's hard to be an island. It's hard to be alone. But it doesn't mean you can't have like times of solitude. That's different than isolation. Like I think as a mom, sometimes I'm always like, get off those dang video, or like, get out. It's sometimes like solitude is okay, or just like some moments of like being alone. That's not the same as loneliness or isolation, where you really have no one, you don't feel safe. You have no one you can talk to. And so, yeah, if all of us were giving all of our effort to help other people be connected and to find a safe person to talk to find a mentor, a trusted adult, a trusted friend, a neighbor, somebody, we'd be a lot better off. And that's all ages. And there's no one can do it alone. We need each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you both.
Yes.
I want to make sure we transition over to the second part of our conversation in a minute here, but I want to just end by talking about other resources that people can access if they know people in their lives, or they themselves maybe are experiencing mental health challenges or thinking about suicide. Where can they go? What are some resources that they can access? I know Adams County is doing a lot of initiatives around suicide prevention. I know CUP's doing a lot as well. Talk to us a little bit about some of those resources.
Well, really, the best sort of thing that I can say is that you need help. And so reaching out to your own insurance company, clinical providers, counselors in the area, trusted people in your own life, because sometimes it's hard to make that step towards counseling, but you'll talk to a neighbor or a friend or a family member. Certainly, we have resources in place when things become urgent or emergencies, but we're really trying to help people much, much earlier. And so for kids, there's free counseling through the iMatter program, as well as just resources within schools and school districts. And then there's a lot of resources that we can point people to at the health department. And, we'd be happy to make the connections for people. There's too many to sort of talk
There's a
about.
lot. We're doing a lot around this.
But I think the most important thing is that people understand that there's both sort of an urgent way to get help through 988, and also there's resources when people are struggling much earlier, just in terms of their own mental health and their own overall health.
Yeah.
I was going to say that too.
How can we get people help earlier, right? That's the key
upstream
thing.
prevention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, literally walk into any trusted place if you really feel immediately at risk or dangerous, like any hospital, any place, and say, I feel like I want to kill myself, and they will take care of you right away, or call 988. But then upstream prevention is way more ideal, like getting help ahead of time, talking to someone, therapy, counseling. It's really important.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Chris,
Thank
we're
you.
going to keep you
Okay.
on the couch here. Levon, thank you. All right. So, second part of our conversation, we're joined by Chris again. Hi.
Hi.
It's like no time has passed.
That's right. I'm back.
We're also joined by Caitlin. Caitlin, you work at CUP.
Yes.
Right? So
I used to,
You used
but
to
yes.
work at CUP.
Mhm.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit of that. If you could introduce yourself and talk a little bit about why you're here today.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Caitlin. I used to work at the Cup Coffee Shop with Chris. She had texted me and asked if, I had anything that I wanted to input into the conversation, and I do. I've dealt with suicide a lot with myself, with people that I know, and I feel like you guys said earlier too, like it's a big thing now. It's becoming like such a normal thing to do, and I feel like it's very important to talk about it and help people, especially with everybody, but with the youth now too. Like everyone, it's just like a normal thing to feel, as everyone's so tapped into their emotions now, and it's just such a normal thing to feel and do now that it's crazy how much it's been happening lately.
Absolutely. Yeah, I admire your willingness to just come to a podcast after someone texted you, hey, do you want to come to a podcast?
She's amazing.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have done that at your age, honestly. But now that you're here, great. Love to pick your brain about this a little bit more. So you mentioned young people talking about mental health. And I'm always curious about how young people talk about mental health. We talked about stigma earlier, right? What do you notice about young people in your life, right? In terms of how they talk about mental health, or maybe what they don't talk about mental health?
I feel like it's a normal thing now to kind of joke about, which I don't think is super funny, but it's something that we joke about. And it's also like when people are really struggling, most of the time you can't even tell unless they say something about it. Like you would have no idea. So I feel like it's a normal thing to joke about now, and people talk about it a lot, but nobody actually does when they're actually struggling with it. Like it's like one of those, like, oh, when you're joking about it, and then like there's like another person in the room that's actually struggling with it, and then they're like, oh, well, it's a joke, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I feel like people who do actually struggle with these things are always scared to talk to people, especially I feel like now, like the older generations, they definitely care a lot more than they used to about it. But I think that sometimes the youth is still stuck on like that they don't really care, that, so we don't love talking, or the youth doesn't love talking to like older generations about it. But I feel like it is becoming more normal to maybe talk to like your friends about it, because that they're not going to be able to do anything about it, like
Right.
they're not going to be able to stop you if something actually were to happen.
Yeah.
Caitlin, older generations like us, you don't think? I'm just curious. You think it's hard that people don't care? Older people don't care about?
I think that they do more now. I feel like even talking about like my parents when they were in high school, it wasn't a super normal thing to talk about. It was kind of like looked down on.
Mm-hmm.
And so to us, when we started first growing up and kind of talking about these things, it seemed like, you know, older generations were kind of like, just get over it. But now they do definitely care more, but it's hard for us to like grasp that feeling of the older generations caring now when they didn't seem like they did before.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of dive into that a little bit more, because I'm sure there are a lot of adults who notice this, right? For young people in their life, whether it's their child, a student, maybe even an employee, right? Maybe they don't know how to start that conversation, or they want to show that they care, but they just don't quite know how to, you know, open the door to that conversation. Any advice for how they could start that?
I think, like you guys have been talking about, connection. I think building a connection with somebody to where they can actually trust you before talking about it, because most of the time, if like we feel like we can trust you, we'll say something to you about it without you having to say something to us. You know what I mean? Like, it is different. Like, if you notice someone, like if Chris, like when I was just working with her when I first started working, obviously we didn't have that super strong connection. And if she would have like, you know, asked me, I would have been like, no, I'm fine. But now if she had asked me, I'd be like, yeah, something's wrong. But I feel like it has to start with connection, like, and then building it more afterwards too. Like, you can't build a connection with somebody and then they like open up to you and then you're like, oh, okay, well, we don't have to talk anymore now. You know, like, yeah, like you guys were talking about, connection is a big thing. I feel that if you just talk to somebody about something, then eventually they'll want to open up to you about more serious things that are going on.
I'm curious how that lands with you, Chris.
Yeah, I'm wondering. It's also, I'm curious. Does it seem like connection in your mind, Caitlin, is like, they're always checking in with me. We go out for coffee. Or you just feel it in your soul, like that person loves me. Like, what is the catalyst for, or what's the line for connection where you're like, okay, now we're cool? Or
yeah,
you know,
I feel like it's a lot of like trust. Like, if I were to like just say something that wasn't that serious, but I asked you not to tell somebody, and then you actually didn't, I would, you know, like build more trust with you than, yeah, like just talking more. Like, we don't even really have to go out and hang out or do something, but just if we're, you know, like we can have just a normal conversation every time like I see you. I feel like connections get built. I feel like connections can get built super easily if both people want the connection.
Ooh, I like that. That's nice.
Like, if only one person's trying, it's gonna take forever to build a connection. But if both of them are trying, it really won't take that long.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, right?
It's good.
That was a wonderful answer. Like, that was awesome. Yeah.
I know it was really great because you made it sound like it's not as hard. I'm sure every single adult listening is like, oh, I don't have time to connect with every 16-year-old on the planet. But you made it sound like it's really possible.
I feel like everyone in the world, whether they believe it or not, has someone who cares about them and wants to make a connection. Sometimes when you're in the little mental state, you don't see it that way, or you don't want the connection because you don't want to have to hurt somebody in the process. But yeah, everybody has someone who cares about them, wants to make a connection. And as long as people more can see that from people, I think that it would be a lot better than what it is right now. But yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. We talked about kind of youth to adult, trust building, connection building. What about youth to youth, like peer to peer? You mentioned that sometimes people, like young people, and I would even argue people in every generation jokes about mental health. It's one of the first things that we talk about in mental health first aid is people might say like, you know, oh, you know, I wish I just wasn't here today. You know, like they say these things and it might be a joke, but it also might be an indication that someone's really struggling with something. So how can youth maintain those connections and build those connections with each other and have conversations in more intentional ways? I
think with youth to youth, I think that it is a little bit harder to talk about it with your friends. I feel like sometimes it is easier if you're like so close to somebody, but at the same time, like when you are so close to somebody, you don't want to tell them that. You don't want them to
Right.
know that you feel that way. Like, it's a really hard thing to just talk about in general. I feel like honestly, sometimes it is easier for youth to talk to adults
Mhm.
because we, like, I don't know, they just feel like safer, like to us or to me at least. But talking to my friends, it's kind of just like weird. Like it just feels a little bit awkward sometimes. But like if you have someone that you have like this really strong connection with, and like mine's like my boyfriend, it's not even really one of my friends, but I talk to him about it all the time. Like we always just have check-ins to make sure that each other's like feeling okay. But I feel like when you have a really strong like thing with somebody, regardless if it's a friend, a partner, or like whatever, that you can kind of just talk about it. It's kind of like a little therapy just without having to, pay for it.
Free therapy, yes.
Yes, for sure.
That's awesome.
Curious if you have anything to add to that, Chris.
Yeah, I was thinking, Caitlin, about our conversation earlier, and if you don't mind, if I could ask this, but when you had your own struggles with suicidal thoughts or ideations or your journey that you've been on, what helped you, or what would have happened if someone said to you, like we were saying, how important that first question is of, are you going to kill yourself? Like, did that help? What helped you?
It was hard because I was kind of just like alone at the time where it happened. I like had my parents, but like I said, my parents didn't really like get it.
Right.
But I had been struggling with like really, really bad anxiety for years, and I didn't know what it was. And I was staying at home all the time. I couldn't really do anything. So I was like, like this would be the best option for me. Thank goodness that my mom like took me to the psych ward, and, I got my stuff figured out. But I do feel like if you notice that somebody's acting a little bit different, whether it's being happier or being sadder, I do think that a question like that would help. I feel like just acknowledging that somebody is acting a little bit differently can make their whole day, because it means that you're paying enough attention to them day to day to know that they are acting differently. So I think, just paying attention to people or just noticing little things about them, and then, asking hard questions that usually people don't want to answer. But even if they don't want to answer it, they'll talk to you about something. Like they'll have some sort of conversation.
Yeah, see, that's the hard truth. That's what I think
Yeah.
is really good for us to explain and to talk about on this podcast, because that's what I've seen, and I've seen it help. I've seen it help students. I've seen it help my own kids and my friends. I want to believe that is the answer. So I'm grateful that you said that you
Yeah.
think that would help you.
So, I think also sometimes, you'll ask the question, people will pay attention and they really, really care. And the person's like, I'm fine. And they're not ready to have that conversation yet. So what can someone do in that situation? Or what, maybe from your own experience, what has helped in that situation when maybe you're not ready to talk about your mental health?
Mm-hmm. I think that if someone were to ask, like, do you want to kill yourself? And I just said, no, I'm fine. Like nothing's wrong. Like I said, I think that it would start a conversation in general. Like, even if it's not about exactly what you wanted it to be about, like if I say like, I'm fine, and they could be like, oh, well, like, how's your day been? How's your week? Like, what do you have going on? Then it makes me like, would make you feel like somebody is like caring about you. Even if something isn't actually wrong, you are actually fine. Like, it does make you feel like, okay, this person does care about me enough to like keep the conversation going, even after I didn't want to talk about it. Like, obviously don't pressure them and be like, well, obviously something's fine or obviously something's wrong. But, just have like a normal conversation. If somebody says that they're fine, either they are or they're not, but you can't do anything about that at that moment.
Sure.
So just keep having a conversation with them. Just make them feel like you want to know about them. You want them to open up to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Connection takes time, right?
Mhm.
To build, even if it's not right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love to have conversations about resilience along with conversations about mental health. And talking, we talk all the time about self-care and how we can build intentional practices to help ourselves build those daily habits, things like that. So what has worked for you, Caitlin, in terms of building resilience or building self-care for yourself?
I feel like it's odd because you could find literally anything if it helps you. I mean, as long as it's not hurting you. Like, please don't become an alcoholic or something like that just because. But if it could be the weirdest thing, and if it's helping you, then it's helping you. It doesn't really matter. You know, I feel like mine was always like, if I felt crappy, just do something that I like, that I don't really want to do. Like get up and just shower, or just get up and pick a piece of trash up off your floor. Like just get up and do something. Even if you are in your bed and you walk to the couch to watch TV, at least you're getting out of bed. I feel like building a habit of every time that you don't feel like you should do something, just do it. Like my thing is that sometimes I don't want to go to church. So if I don't want to go to church, I'm definitely going to church. So if you don't want to do something, just make yourself do it, because it'll make you feel so much better. I know it's a huge thing right now with like not showering and like not being able to get out of bed and brush your teeth. But I promise that it makes you feel so much better once you actually do it, because then you're done and then you're clean and you're like, oh, wow, I do feel a lot better. Mm-hmm. So just making yourself do something you don't want to do when you're feeling that way can help a lot.
Little things can kind of make a difference, right? I knew someone who their self-care was laundry, which I mean, I love laundry personally, but like, but that was their thing, right? It was just the way of organizing things and the feel of it. Like it's a very simple household chore, but it brought them a lot of comfort, peace. Yeah.
Yeah. One of our classes is healthy living, and it's just what you're talking about, just like little baby steps that will help get to the bigger steps. So just instead of eating just DoorDash, talk about like getting up, making a wrap, chopping up chicken, like little things that will help you in the long run. And that includes like going for a walk or going outside, or we talk a lot about grounding and like touching your feet to the grass, or I don't know, anything like that will like knock you out of what state you're in. It's a lot of mindfulness and a lot of just being present in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It's helpful, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Yeah, even just the simple things, right? Simple mindfulness.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of kids now too, they're really like into like music and stuff.
Yeah, music's huge.
So I always tell people like, you know, like if you just want to lay in bed and listen to music, why don't you get up and take a shower and play music outside the shower? Because then you're doing both things that you want to do, but you're getting yourself out of bed. Like just finding little things that make you feel better will make such a difference. So.
Yeah. No, I appreciate all of those. I think those are really, really, really helpful things that people can just do in their daily lives, right? It doesn't have to be a big production, you know, a huge vacation. It can be simple things that you can do. Absolutely.
If you can afford a vacation, then do that.
Then do that, yeah. Always take that if you can afford it.
We talk about mindfulness a lot too, because if you are feeling that way, you can't get out of bed, you can't take a shower, the ripple effect then is really, it makes your life so much harder. You don't go to school, you don't go to work, then you're late, you're going to lose your job. You're going to like, you just make everything worse. And so, but then that brain space to live in the brain space of like, well, then what's going to happen? Then I won't be able to pay my bills and all the spiraling. So we teach a lot of just like, stay right in the moment. Like, what can you just do right now? Cause the past is the past. You can't change it. You cannot control the future. Just stay right in the moment. Okay. Right now I can get out of bed. Like right now I could take a shower. Right now I can call my boss and say, I'm just going to be late instead of I'm no showing the whole day. Right. That's huge for young people. I'm on my way. I had a hard morning, but I'm on my way. Just like get to where you're supposed to be, get to the thing you're supposed to be doing a little bit at a time versus like, okay, I'll come and I'll be the most excellent. No, just right now. What can I do right now in the moment? Super helpful.
Yeah. Chris, when you work with young people on some of these like kind of regulation or mindfulness activities or ideas, is it resonant with them? Does it take a little time for them to kind of think through what that means for them, or do they kind of get it right away? No, they get it right away. Highly resonates. Like they've never heard it, like big light bulbs that go on the same way that it went on for me when I heard these things for the first time. It's difficult to put into practice, but it really resonates. Having good boundaries, being mindful, assuming the best, not letting your heart spiral from the past. These are just like some basic things we just talk about all the time. And I see it almost every single day, big light bulbs that go on like, oh, I never heard that. I never thought about that. I never, and we're not mental health experts. We're just caring adults who really love people. We just try to be there for them. But, it highly resonates immediately. Yeah. In fact, I wish I could just like tell everybody all the things all at once.
because it's so important.
I kind of talk about this a lot, which I learned through CUP, but you kind of have like a daily check-in with the people you're working with, that you're hanging out with. I mean, it doesn't obviously have to be a verbal, like, hey, how's everybody doing today? It's kind of like, just like, you know, like talk to people, see how they're feeling. And if somebody can't give 100%, then you give 120. Because sometimes people just aren't going to feel that great during the day. They're going to be upset about something that happened at home, or they're just sick or something. But if you can put in that a little bit extra effort to help them out for the day, then just do it. Like if you're doing anything and you realize that somebody isn't going to be able to do what they usually do, just help them out a little bit. Because it's not going to be that hard, and it's going to help them too.
Absolutely. That sounds like fostering connection right there. I want to end with just one more question. And I like to end some of these conversations talking about hope and a better future, right? And so I'm thinking about listeners who maybe are listening, who maybe don't have people to talk to, who might be struggling, or might know someone who's struggling, right? What's one message of hope that they can take away from the conversation today? And it could be from this conversation, from the conversation we have with Levon. What's one thing that they could take away from this conversation?
I think just like hold on just a little bit longer. Like if you can make it one more day, then you made it one more day. And why would you stop then? Like if you can make it 2 more weeks, then why would you give up at the extra 2 weeks? And something, even if it's not happening right now, something good that you love, regardless if anybody else loves it, you might love it, is going to happen eventually. As long as you try, you stay here, and you just keep working for it. Like, it's going to suck for a little while. Me and my boyfriend always talk about this, but life's hard right now. But we will get to the point where we're happy and we're content and we don't need anything else. And we won't even think about what happened to us a couple years ago or why we felt sad a couple years ago. So just stay as long as you can. Stay a little bit longer, and something that you love will happen to you.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Caitlin.
Yes, good, Caitlin.
Yeah. Well, you have to follow that up now.
I know. Well, my hopeful is also what Caitlin said. Everyone has somebody that loves them. I really believe that so much. So I know sometimes it doesn't look like that when you're in a really dark place or you feel alone. But honestly, like, somebody loves you. Like, open your eyes to who is in your circle and who's around you, who's texting you, who's checking in, who you're talking to. Remember who is in your circle and go talk to them. Like, there's hope. Yeah, I loved what you said. Yeah.
Chris
Thank
must be
you.
very proud of Caitlin.
You have no idea. You have no idea.
When I first started working there, it was not the greatest. But
We're so proud of Caitlin. Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you
so
so
proud
much.
of Caitlin. I have a deep, deep love and respect for her and her journey. And I really believe God has big, beautiful things for her in her future. Yes.
Well, I just appreciate both of you being here.
Thank you for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you so much.
It's a really good conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you both.
course.
And thank you for joining us for the All in Adams podcast.
That's a wrap for this episode of All in Adams. Thank you for joining us as we explore the people, programs, and the policies that make Adams County a great place to live, work, and thrive. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe and share with your friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Have a topic you'd like us to cover? Let us know. We're all in for bringing you the stories that matter most. Until next time, take care of each other and stay connected with us on Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor, and X. We're all in Adams, and we're all in for you.